would like to touch upon the need to secure peace and stability, which are, of course, the necessary foundation for economic and social development. Ethiopia firmly believes that regional and continental integration is essential to diversify our economies, ensure peaceful coexistence amongst neighbors, and work together for our common growth. Africa needs strong regional and continental platforms where national development challenges from a geographical, logistics, and security perspective are taken into consideration. All of us here gathered today need to embrace the complexity of the world we live in and have critical debates to bring about creative but yet pragmatic solutions that will lead us to the transformation for Africa to prosper.
Here in Africa, terrorism is destroying some of our states by reversing the priorities through the increase in exorbitant military spending at the expense of vital social sectors while opening the way to misleading populist speeches. Unconstitutional changes of government have multiplied in total defiance of the entire political and legal order that had founded our organization. Never since the establishment of the African Union has such a number of transitions following unconstitutional change of government has been seen in Africa. Our failure to counter such a phenomenon is obvious. Instead of being joyful modes of peaceful transfer or maintenance of power, elections have become, through the extent of their irregularities, factors for deepening crisis. It is, therefore, legitimate to wonder what has become of our African peace and security architecture, APSA, and its twin sister, the African governance architecture, AGA, the mere mention of whose acronyms galvanized us and made us shudder with pride. Are we being deceived by designing them according to their current physiognomy? Did we err by blind mimicry in designing them the way we did? How can we escape this nagging question? Libya remains divided and exposed to all kinds of external interference to satisfy their insatiable appetites. We recognize the efforts that are being made for national reconciliation through the high-level committee of the African Union that was established under the leadership of President Sassou Nguesso and with the active support of the Libyan authorities, and whose chairman of the Presidential Council is here, and I thank them. Terrorism is destroying some of our states by reversing the priorities through the increase in exorbitant military spending at the expense of vital social sectors while opening the way to misleading populist speeches. Unconstitutional changes of government have multiplied in total defiance of the entire political and legal order that had founded our organization. Never since the establishment of the African Union has such a number of transitions following unconstitutional change of government has been seen in Africa. Our failure to counter such a phenomenon is obvious. Instead of being joyful modes of peaceful transfer or maintenance of power, elections have become, through the extent of their irregularities, factors for deepening crisis. It is, therefore, legitimate to wonder what has become of our African peace and security architecture, APSA, and its twin sister, the African governance architecture, AGA, the mere mention of whose acronyms galvanized us and made us shudder with pride. Are we being deceived by designing them according to their current physiognomy? Did we err by blind mimicry in designing them the way we did? how can we escape this nagging question? Libya remains divided and exposed to all kinds of external interference to satisfy their insatiable appetites. We recognize the efforts that are being made for national reconciliation through the high-level committee of the African Union that was established under the leadership of President Sassou Nguesso and with the active support of the Libyan authorities, and whose chairman of the Presidential Council is here, and I thank them.
Dear viewers, thank you for joining us. You're watching Talk to OBN on OBN Horn of Africa. This is our weekly program, Talk to OBN. Now I am joined by Fabio Bargiachi, founder and executive director for European Center for Electoral Support. We have heard major problems happening in Africa and beyond. Majorly things raised were lawlessness, injustice, corruption, coup attempts, unconstitutional change of government, terrorism. And on the other hand, your work is to implement democracy in Africa through election, right? What is your project exactly doing in Africa?
Thanks a lot for giving me the possibility to illustrate what we do at the European Center for Electoral Support, which is a not-for-profit foundation that had the possibility to establish back in 2010 with other African and European democracy practitioners in order to facilitate the dialogue on the electoral cooperation between the European Union member states and the countries, partner of the EU and the EU member states that are requesting electoral assistance. So what we do, we are providing comparative experiences, peer exchange when it comes to capacity strengthening on electoral practices and electoral standards when it comes to the credibility and transparency of elections. And on this, we are actually working since 5 years with the African Union Commission, and we have signed a memorandum of understanding with Commissioner Bankole when it comes to our joint collaboration to promote electoral integrity, prevention, mitigation, and management of electoral conflicts, and inclusion of women, youth, and disadvantaged groups into electoral processes. As you are saying yesterday, despite the theme of this African Union Summit for Heads of State is mainly education, but we heard a lot about conflicts and many other issues that are happening around the world, not only in Africa. Unfortunately, we are experiencing conflicts in Europe, in the Middle East, in Africa, in South America, all over the world. It's a challenging moment for, let's say, humankind, also because we do have geopolitical changes at present that are at stake, and therefore we think, in our opinion, that the only solution is to engage even more on our joint work when it comes to peer exchange on different countries and experience, where what is important, we say all the time, that each and single country has to implement its own election and democracy process at their own speed and level, because of course democracy and election are not a blueprint. It cannot be implemented at the same time, at the same level, at the same timing everywhere in the world. So I think it is important, the work we are doing here with the African Union Commission, especially since the theme is education. It is important to underline that we were proud ourselves to have been collaborating with the African Union Commission to develop and now finalize the school curriculum at the different level of educations in order to disseminate in Africa the main principle of the charter, of the African Charter for democracy, good governance and elections.
Okay, you are working to bring good governance in Africa through democratically elected leaders should come into play. Have you conducted any feasibility by going various African nations so far?
Yeah, actually what we do, first of all, we had the possibility to work in 50 countries or plus, 50 countries between Africa, Middle East and East Europe. But we are working mainly in Africa, actually. And as I said, we had the possibility to work with the African Union, also in association with the African Network for Electoral Management Bodies, comprising 48 electoral commission, but also with the regional networks of electoral commission. So we are talking about the ECOWAS, the SADC, the ECAS, and also the Electoral Commission of the African Arab States. So in this context, what we can see is an important trend whereby, as I was saying before, it's extremely important to consider the implementation of credibility and transparency of an election. So when it comes to the specific set of legislation or specific set of electoral and democracy practices at a given moment in a given country. Elections and democracy are not a blueprint, so in each single country you need to harmonize and customize what are the practices when it comes to the credibility, transparency and acceptance of the result of an elections, because as I was saying, we are working a lot on preventing and mitigating electoral conflicts, also because elections is a fierce competition everywhere in the world to access to power, and so far I don't think there is a better system, or as Churchill was saying, a less worse system than the democracy and elections when it comes to contribution of sustainable development and the sharing of wealth on a given country.
Well, Fabio, this project is very huge. You operate throughout the world, mainly in Middle East and Africa. It needs finance. Who ingests the finance? Where do you get those funds?
Actually, we established ourselves, as I was saying, to facilitate the electoral cooperation between European Union member states and the partner countries that are requesting electoral assistance. So therefore, our funding are coming solely from the European Union and the European Union member states, knowing that Germany, Italy, France, Denmark, Austria, Luxembourg, Ireland are our main funder when it comes to activity we are delivering.
Well, what are the major challenges that you're facing while you try to operate this ambitious plan?
The challenge that we are operating is related to, let's say, knowledge transfer and also retention of knowledge, because in many African countries, let's say, when we are working with electoral stakeholders, being electoral management bodies, civil society organizations, electoral justice institutions dealing with electoral dispute resolution, security forces, you have a lot of rotation and brain drain. So people working, for instance, in the Electoral Commission for one elections, and then they find, understandably so, good other job in other sectors, or they are leaving the institution. And therefore, you have a continuous brain drain. It's not happening only in Africa, of course, it's happening everywhere. So the challenge for any institutions in the world, including Africa where we are working, it is to retain the people with experience, and therefore try to increase the conditions of the people working in those institutions in order for them to find attractive to stay and to feel safe and stable at their own work instead of searching for other jobs. That is an important challenge, because we concentrate a lot on capacity development and on education, but then of course if the persons that we have trained go to work with another institution or a company or the private sector, then we have to restart again.
You have experiences of election in Europe, Middle East, Africa, and other parts of the world as well. What are the unique features of Africa when it comes to elections?
I think it's difficult to give a unique feature, because, as I was saying, each and single country have its own history, its own political environment, its own legislative electoral framework. So therefore, it's pretty difficult to give a specific answer for each and single country. And this is why we have engaged extensively with the African Union Commission to contribute at continental and regional level in Africa for the joint work on electoral integrity, preventing, mitigating and managing electoral conflicts, and especially civic and voter education when it comes to the inclusion of women, youth and disadvantaged groups into the electoral processes, in order to increase the acceptability and the credibility of an electoral process. This is the challenge that lies in all African countries, all European countries and countries all over the world.
Okay, it's been long since you have started this project. Can you just tell me, I mean, good experiences that you realized or you obtained participating as an electoral council or someone who processed that election process. Successful elections so far in your experience.
We do have, well, first of all, we feel blessed every day to do this kind of job because we really think we are contributing to the joint effort that, let's say, international community at large, global north, global south, in our case working with the African Union Commission and with the regions in Africa, when it comes to, to deal with the preventing and mitigating electoral conflicts. Because our work at the end of the day is related to political dialogue and mediation when it comes to implementation of electoral processes. So therefore we had a lot of, let's say, satisfaction in working in the different countries where we are working. It's 5 years we are actually working also here in Ethiopia. We had the pleasure to the funding of the European Union, Germany, Ireland and Denmark to support the National Electoral Board of Ethiopia, back then led by Madame Birtukan Medikassa, and also to support the SECOE, the coalition of domestic observer organizations, when it comes to their own activity of domestic election observation and civic and voter education. So therefore we do have successes when it comes to providing peer exchange and comparative experience, and to see that our peers are implementing those principles when it comes to the organization of their own elections, to which we are not there to interfere. We are not there certainly to patronize. We are there only to bring our comparative experience, and for any country we are working to apply to their own specific set of legislation and political practices.
It's been 5 years since Ethiopia conducted the latest election. Have you participated on that?
We have supported, and we are still here. We have an office here. We have international Ethiopian colleagues working with us. So therefore we are here. Hopefully we are here also for the next electoral processes in order to continuous work with the new chairperson of the National Electoral Board that was recently appointed, but also with the leadership of SECOE and other electoral stakeholders to further contribute to what we have started already. So therefore we are here, and then we bring our experience at the disposal of Ethiopia.
How about your collaboration with African Union?
African Union is our most important partner. We know all the persons that are on the political and peace affair department led by Commissioner Bankole since a long time, also because since 1997 I've been doing this job before the United Nations, then European Union. Then I created a joint task force between European Commission and United Nations Development Programme, and in 2010 I left to build up the European Center for Electoral Support, where the first president was Abbot Apollinaire Malumalu, which was a former president of the Electoral Commission of Democratic Republic of Congo, and also the chairman of the Electoral Commissions of the Southern African Development Community and of the Central African states. So therefore the collaboration with the African Union Commission is extremely good, and in the last 3 years and a half we have implemented extensive activities with the funding of the Italian government, especially on education, I was saying, on the school curriculum, and also on a lot of reflections and manuals on election observation of the African Union, and reflections on what are the best practices on transitional justice and on those countries that have experienced extra constitutional changes in the last 3 years in Africa.
Yesterday during the opening session, it has been said pre and post elections crisis ignite to a huge blast of war in Africa. How would European Center for Electoral Support see this remark?
The remark is very important to be taken into consideration, exactly confirming what I was saying at the beginning of this talk show, and then the timing of organizing an elections is extremely important, and therefore each country together with let's say, the partner that they have together with the African Union, with other regional organizations, and let's say other stakeholders have to decide themselves when is the right and ripe moment to organize an electoral process according to their constitution, or if it is an extra constitutional change, according to the agreement in the context of the political dialogue. It is extremely important because, as I was saying, elections is a fierce competition to access to power and to resources, and therefore what is important is indeed to organize credible elections, and what is even more important, it is the shared acceptance of the result of an election, because of course you do have a party or a candidate that will win, and then it's important that the opposition, the losing parties or candidates, accept to be in the opposition, to challenge the government that has been elected, and play their role of watchdog and trying to challenge them and be more competitive for the next election.
Well, Fabio, your organization is entitled European Center for Electoral Support.
Indeed.
So we can interpret this into many ways. Is that a support of funding, or is that a support of providing training, or is that a support of other material assistance? What are you exactly doing in making election fair and acceptable in Middle East, Africa, and other parts of the world? What kind of support?
It's a mix of what you have said, but mainly we provide knowledge transfer, peer exchange, comparative experience through capacity development, especially concentrating on what we call leadership and conflict management skills for all electoral stakeholders. And I underline electoral stakeholders because we don't work only with the electoral management bodies, but we work with the media sector when it comes to media monitoring for fake news, deep fake. We work with the electoral justice institutions for the electoral dispute resolutions. We work with security forces when it comes to the securitization of the elections, and we work with political parties and candidates when it comes to multi-party activities that we are doing. So we are also working on operational support, and therefore, for instance, here in Ethiopia, we have support the National Electoral Board to transport the electoral material in the polling station where elections were organized, or we have supported SECOE, the domestic coalition of observers, let's say, in order to deploy their own people and providing training when it comes to election observation reporting. So it's a set of activities that we are putting in place. It depends on each single country. It depends on the agreement between the country and European Union, European member states, and we are the one implementing together with other organizations this electoral support.
Well, Fabio Bargiachi, founder of European Center for Electoral Support. Thank you for your expertise and time.
Thanks a lot.
Dear viewers, thank you for watching. This brings us to the end of our edition for today. See you next time with another edition. Hope you had a wonderful insight about our today's program. Bye-bye. Take care.